What's good, y'all? So this is a different horror channel that I bumped into. Actually, you can see it at the top there. What culture? What culture? Excuse me. Horror. Um, I've seen this channel before. They have different ones. I've seen the one where they was talking about gaming, and I've seen a video where they did talk about horror before. And I like how they ask questions and give their opinions on things. And there's one that caught my attention called this one here. Wait. 10 great movie monsters trapped in awful horror movies. And that made me think. I was literally just sitting here thinking, I'm like, what are some that I enjoyed, but the movie was like, and I was like, I couldn't think of any off the top. I mean, outside the obvious, like Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, like those are classic horror movie characters. But we can't, well, I can't, I'm gonna speak for myself. I can't say every movie I've seen them in was great. But or even Scream. Like I love the Scream franchise, but I'm not a fan of every one of them. I love some, and the other ones I watched it once and didn't care to watch it again. I'll make a video on which ones I think about. Maybe later if y'all want that, let me know in the comments. But yeah, it had me think. There's a lot of horror monsters. Man, there's a lot of them. So I don't know. I want to see who they're going to choose, and then I'm going to give my opinion on that, and maybe it'll refresh my memory. So let's go ahead and get into it. Shout out to What Culture Horror. Actually, let me like their video now. I always want to make sure if I'm reacting to anybody else's channel to give them their credit and, ask y'all to subscribe to them if you like this kind of stuff as well. But anyway, I'm curious to see who they're going to choose because, instead of me thinking hard, let me just see what they say. And I'll let y'all know if I agree or disagree.
The monster movie is one of the cornerstones of horror cinema. Since time
Van
immemorial, our
Helsing.
screens have shaken and
Yo, hold up. Before
sequences
it's funny that that's in the beginning. I have to say this. Van Helsing is one of the most underappreciated movies of all time. I wouldn't put it in the horror category, even though it has characters in there that could be in a horror movie. But Van Helsing as a whole, to me, I enjoyed it when it first came out as a kid, and I enjoy it to this day. Hugh Jackman I thought was great. Actually, I think everybody, what's her name? Kate Beckinsale or Kate, what was her name? I think it was Beckinsale. She was in it, but I love the guy who played Dracula. I thought Frankenstein was, especially like when I was a kid too, people didn't like the Frankenstein actor and character. I personally like it. It brought him character. Instead of just a monster sitting there just, making noises and stuff. He actually had character. And some people didn't like it. I personally did. But Van Helsing as a whole, if you haven't seen it, it's with Hugh Jackman. Definitely give it a shot. Give it a shot. Even if you saw it and you was like, it wasn't my thing, watch it one more time. I watched it again and it is just as good as when I first saw it. So that was one of the most underappreciated movies. And I wish they made a second one and never did because of the backlash or just not the appreciation that viewers had of it. I don't know what, personally, this is my opinion, I don't know what people wanted else from that movie. I thought they gave a full package. Anyway, let's continue on.
Scaly creatures rising from the swamp, hairy beasts howling at the moon, and bloodthirsty bad boys seducing the uninitiated.
Oh, Blade 3. Okay, so hold on. Wait, what's the title?
Into the heart of anyone who lays eyes on them doesn't mean
in awful horror movies. Okay, see the three movies they showed Van Helsing, The Mummy, and what was the other one I just said? Wolfman. I guess Wolfman you can consider a horror movie, but I wouldn't consider Mummy or Van Helsing a horror. Actually, I don't even think if you look it up on IMDb, they don't even consider it. I think they call it action adventure. All right, so this is not technically horror genre, I guess. We're about to find out.
But the world they inhabit
But the characters they're showing, I wouldn't consider it.
I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 great movie monsters trapped in awful horror movies. Number 10, the Boogeyman in Boogeyman. Drawing on one of the most pervasive monsters of contemporary common folklore, Stephen Kay's Boogeyman seeks to flesh out all of our childhood nightmares by bringing the ultimate bedroom big bad onto our screens. Unsurprisingly, the film features
Boogeyman, it was one of them I saw once and didn't care to see it again. Would I call it awful? Maybe I have to watch it again, but I don't think it was awful. It just was like, it was alright, but the character was interesting, the Boogeyman, but at the same time, I don't know. I think I would enjoy it less now than when I first saw it, being older now, I think it's just, I don't know. Some movies, when you see it now, it doesn't have that same feel to when you was younger. And, you know, Boogeyman, you can relate to that as a kid and stuff like that. I don't know. It wasn't horrible in my opinion, but that's their opinion.
Is the Boogeyman,
but it wasn't great
or the
at the same time.
To us Brits, a supernatural creature who lives under our beds and in our cupboards, emerging only at night to scare the living daylights out of anyone in reach, and in several cases murdering the home's inhabitants and stealing the kids. Unfortunately, this Boogeyman is confined by more than just a pair of plywood doors. Make no mistake, the Boogeyman is a great monster, but it's ruined by some shoddy CGI and a desperate need on the part of the filmmakers to blow their own tension and show the bad guy out in the open. What makes the Boogeyman scary, in both this film and real life, is that we don't really know what he looks like. We only know what
That's a good point.
Does.
That's a good point.
Number
Some
9,
characters need to
Dracula
stay.
in Blade Trinity.
You know, like, there are some characters, I will agree, that they're meant to stay a mystery. And once the mystery of them is revealed, it doesn't have that same effect. So I can see why they call it off. Okay.
Cross Creed Scott Stapp
Blade
with
Trinity,
one of the sexiest, deadliest monsters of all time. Drake is what? Primary antagonist of David S.
That
Goya's
movie was
Blade
hard to watch.
Trinity.
I'm not even going to
Marvel
front.
movie
I'm a
that
fan of
Mahershala
Blade,
Ali,
the
Ryan
franchise,
Reynolds, and the
but
MCU
this one in
rather
particular.
audiences forgot, Drake is the early noughties answer
And to be
to
real,
Drake.
I didn't have an
Sporting
issue with him
all
being
the neck
Dracula.
jewelry and shirts
It was
that
just a
go
movie in
button higher
itself.
than navel, Drake parades around as a human day by day, one of the perks of being the bad guy, and turns all red and satany by night, with a monolithic presence and predator-style mouth. The new cool modern Dracula was a great idea, especially as a counterpoint to the holier-than-thou daywalking vamp Blade, but Goya and his DP Gabriel Beristain mishandled the character something rotten. Rather than striking fear into our hearts, Drake instead comes off as a bit tacky, especially when strutting around the city in soft lighting to a hip-hop beat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the movie, I think, was bad. You could tell that was a quick cash grab. You can tell. Then hearing the backstory behind the scenes, I think it was Ryan Reynolds that said, I don't think Wesley Snipes wasn't talking to anybody, and I think he was hard to deal with. This is what was said. I don't know how much of it is true, but it really seemed like a quick cash grab. The actor, again, itself, I don't think he was a big issue of being Dracula, but how she said, how they wrote him, and not just him, just the movie in general. It was hard to watch. It literally, you could, like, the first and second one was miles ahead from the third one, and they could have done wonders with the third one. With as much money as they was making from the first two, it having, better technology, they have better CGI, all that stuff. It just was terribly written, just terrible. I can agree with.
The least of the film's issues.
And I love Ryan Reynolds, and Jessica Biel was in it, but it was
down to ground level,
terribly put together.
Flop. Number 8, Mary Shaw in Dead Silence. The subject of poorly composed nursery rhymes and nightmares alike, Mary Shaw, the antagonist of ventriloquism horror Dead Silence, is quite unlike any other horror movie.
I think that movie's underrated.
A poltergeist ventriloquist, Mary rips out the tongues of those who scream in her presence before, murdering them. But that's not where the fun ends. Oh no, as she has a penchant for creating and controlling perfect dolls, life-size puppets made from the humans she kills. Though Dead Silence
I don't agree with this one.
on
I
the
believe this was an
enduring appeal of
underrated
the living
movie.
Dummy, Mary turns out to be far scarier by spades. Unfortunately, the rest of the film can't keep up. Bogged down by a meandering plot, boring dialogue, and forgettable main characters, it fails to
Maybe
make
I
the
see it
most
again,
of its
but from my
villain,
remembrance,
and
I think that
instead
was.
rests idly
I mean, it wasn't
in the
amazing,
usual
but
cheap
it
horror
was
tropes
great.
and
It was good to me.
jump scares. Mary is a monster for the ages. The human puppets are horrifying, but the film they're in is barely alive. Number 7, The Wolfman.
I don't know.
In The
I disagree with that one.
The Wolfman is a cornerstone
The Wolfman
character
was very
in
mid.
Universal's
I remember
catalogue
watching
of
that, and it
classic
was
movie
slow.
monsters.
It was
Thus,
dry.
when the studio
Great
assembled
casting,
monster
but just
movie master
it was
Anthony
very
Hopkins,
slow to
along
me.
with other big
Was it
hitters like
awful?
Benicio
No.
del Toro and
See, that's the
Hugo
thing when I
Weaving
see
for
this
a
title. When I'm looking for awful, like terrible, like how I feel about Blade Trinity. Like, that was just awful. I don't think these movies. Maybe if the title was, if these great characters was in better movies, I guess that would be a better title. But to say they're awful, I would say Wolfman was awful because, like I said, great cast. I mean, they got Agent Smith there. The other movies I was talking about, Dead Silence, I am shocked that was on the list. But yeah, I would, so far outside of Blade Trinity, I wouldn't put the other ones in awful. I don't know. Boogeyman, I'm on the fence. I gotta watch that again. But yeah,
remake of the old classic.
it was slow, but I wouldn't call it awful.
Hopkins and Del Toro play two generations of the titular character, tearing the small town of Blackmore to pieces in a bestial rampage that is surprisingly visceral and unafraid of showing us all the blood, guts, and stringy bits in between. And that's not to mention their transformations, in which director Joe Johnston takes great delight in mapping out every snapping bone and unhinging jaw. Unfortunately, the magnificence of the monster is lost in a film that, while true to the gothic feel and broader narrative shape of its filmic roots, is frequently dull, rarely surprising, and often at war with the varied performances of its cast. Above all else, Hopkins phones in at least 50% of his performance, perhaps having foreseen a critical disappointment in the making.
I don't know about that
Number
one.
6. Nemesis in Resident Evil Apocalypse. Follow up to Paul
Okay,
W.S.
I'm
Anderson's
just gonna be
middling to
real.
good video game
I was never really a fan of the Resident Evil movies. I watched them, but the games had perfect plot with it. And I think if you just followed the game's plot, it would have been fine. The way they made these stories. And then, actually, is it in Apocalypse where Jill was in for like 5 minutes? And I remember it got me excited. I think it was Apocalypse, right? I think this is the one they're talking about.
Apocalypse takes Alice out of the Umbrella Corporation's underground facility and into a hellish
But it was I think it was Apocalypse. It's been a minute since I've seen a Resident Evil movie. And that recent one. It was like, man. The Resident Evil franchise, as successful as it was one of those movies. I wouldn't call it awful. It was one of the movies I watched once and didn't care to watch it again. You know, to me it was very cheesy, and then the plot is like when you know Resident Evil, and it's like, why don't you just follow the game? But they want to do their own thing, and which I respect as long as you do it right. But it just, in my opinion, it obviously did right because it made how many movies? It made so many. So people was watching it, and the money was going in their pockets. So apparently, it was doing very well. So I'm not hating on them. It was just the big question for me is what I put in awful. A few of them, yes. Some of them, I'm like, it was okay. I take that back. The first one was. It captivated me, so I'll take that. I like the first one because I didn't know what to expect. Resident Evil movie, I did not expect. I didn't know what to expect. But the more they kept making, I'm just like, okay. But yeah, what I call it awful, a couple of them, yes. Let me know in the comment section which one would you. I mean, if you are agreeing with me, what would you put on that list as awful? I have a couple in mind where I watched it and I'm like, okay, it was like one of those moments. But
Raccoon City, where the zombie apocalypse
I'm glad they did mention Apocalypse because I thought Nemesis. Oh, here we go. Yeah, actually, I thought that was done well.
Video game antagonist Nemesis to stalk her through the streets. A nigh unstoppable mutant with a sewn-up face and an arsenal of heavy weaponry, Nemesis, here played by Matthew G. Taylor, is the kind of, nemesis that can make a franchise. The creature design is spot on,
yes, that's what I liked about it,
while offering a tangible non-CG monster for audiences to fear. And it casts a long shadow over the movie before a final act twist that challenges everything we think we know. Alas, Apocalypse is still a Paul W.S. Anderson film, and despite a stellar villain and an ass-kicking lead, it manages to flounder in plot and substance. It bets the house on big dramatic action sequences and comes up short. How could they get it so right while getting it so wrong? Number 5, Slender Man in Slender Man.
I was one of those people that never really
cared
cared for Slender
with his
Man.
name on it, Slender Man haunted the minds and
I knew what was
screens of the 21st century.
The trendy thing, like it was on
emerging
YouTube and
as
stuff.
one of
But when I heard of it being a
truly
movie, I was like,
contemporary folklores. A mysterious, elongated humanoid with a featureless face and a black
can see
suit.
why they choose
He
this
hides
one.
in the background of photographs, stalks children in the forest, and generally manipulates things from a distance. It makes sense then for a film adaptation to draw on what was a largely untapped and yet widely recognized well of terror. But with the movie business being what it is, that is where the ingenuity began and ended. The film relied on the character's popularity to get bums on seats in the cinema and left trivial concerns like story and scares for the birds. As a result, the film's plot is as thin as the titular character, and the frights egregiously few and far between. At its core, though, Slender Man suffers from a similar ailment to Boogeyman, in that it offers up too much of its monster, a monster who thrives in darkness, shadows, and
it's one of the monsters again, like
Number
where
4,
I said it before. Yeah, see, they said Frankenstein, and I want to hear what she has to say because I disagree with that. I actually like Frankenstein and Van Helsing, but some monsters, like studios be doing too much, and some are meant to be mysterious and stay that way. Once you reveal it, some of them just don't have that same effect. And yeah, there's another one on the list, but I'm a bit curious to see what Van Helsing because I disagree.
In Van Helsing. Stephen Sommers' gothic horror Van Helsing promised horror fans a smorgasbord of creatures from
great
across
production,
the literary
everything.
And
in
beyond.
my
and
opinion,
boy, did it deliver! With so many good monsters to choose from, it's hard to know which to settle on. But the crowning achievement of this film's rogues gallery is surely creature come anti-hero Frankenstein's monster. Unlike the hammy, green-headed hammer horror Frankensteins of old, Sheila Hensley's incarnation of the creature feels raw, powerful, and quite unlike Robert De Niro's disastrous appearance in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, very well cast. The physical design feels authentic to the period setting and yet modern at the same time, looking as sharp
Oh, wait a minute,
as
I'm reading this whole thing wrong. It's great movie monsters trapped in an in awful horror movies. I've been saying that this whole time, but for some reason I thought when she chose Frankenstein that she was going to say something bad about him. No, so she agrees that Frankenstein's monster is actually a good one. Let me hear what she has to say. Sorry.
Stephen Sommers' gothic horror Van Helsing promised
hear it all over
a
again.
smorgasbord of creatures from across the literary canon and beyond, and boy did it deliver. With so many good monsters to choose from, it's hard to know which to settle on. But the crowning achievement of this film's rogues gallery is surely creature come anti-hero Frankenstein's monster. Unlike the hammy, green-headed hammer horror Frankensteins of old, Sheila Hensley's incarnation of the creature feels raw, powerful, and quite unlike Robert De Niro's disastrous appearance in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, very well cast. The physical design feels authentic to the period setting and yet modern at the same time, looking as sharp today as it did in 2004. And that's to say nothing of Hensley's performance, which perfectly captures the pain and tragedy of the part.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. You felt for Frankenstein, bro. Like, that was the one thing. Like, this one had character. You felt, you feel his story, his pain, everything. It wasn't just a monster growling and he's alive. It wasn't that feel. And we've seen other depictions of Frankenstein. I'm not saying all of them was bad, but this was top tier to me. But to say it was an awful movie, like, that's another, like, I disagree with that. I like that she's giving Frankenstein his due, but Van Helsing is far from awful, bro. You know what? Let me know in the comment section. I have 10 movies, at least 10, of movies that I believe deserves their respect, but is underappreciated or hated for for the wrong reasons. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that video. I'll make that video because I could talk about that. Not just horror, but movies in general. I'll put all the genres together, because there's some movies where I'll be questioning, why do people hate it? And I know everybody has their opinion. You have your likes and your dislikes, but let me know if you want to know what those 10 are in the comments.
The
I'm glad they're giving Frankenstein his due.
And yet modern at the same time, looking as sharp today as it did in 2004. And that's to say nothing of Hensley's performance, which perfectly captures the pain and tragedy of the part. For at his core, Frankenstein's monster is a deeply misunderstood creature, cast out by a society that fears him based on his appearance and origins. Unfortunately for Sommers, Hensley, and the monster, Van Helsing is just a Hugh Jackman vehicle, and a weak one at that. Visually
it is
flat,
not. I disagree.
CGI, Frankenstein's
let that slide because
monster
you're giving
winds up
Frankenstein some
really
respect, but come on
screen.
now.
Number 3, Amonette in The Mummy. Sophia Bottella's face may not be the one most of us bring to...
I gotta say something about The Mummy. Was it great? No. Was it good? Yeah, enough. And here's about my point. I believe this was a franchise that the studio should have let they should have just let happen. Even if they lose a little money on the first one, see what happens. If it's true that Johnny Depp, and I forgot who else it was some other big names, was going to be in the next movies of the franchise, I believe they should have just learned from the mistakes of The Mummy, take it, and go and learn from it, and fix whatever mistakes from The Mummy, and continue on with the franchise. I don't think they should have just dropped the whole franchise. I don't know how much money they lost. Maybe they did lose a lot, so they couldn't afford to make another one. But there was a picture of Tom Cruise, Russell Crowe, Johnny Depp, and I don't have my phone with me right now, but it was somebody. It was other people too, and to hear their plan, I'm like, I'm excited to see where they go with this. Now, obviously, we're not going to see that, but this was one of the movies where I agree it was not great and it was mid at best. But it was one of the, I think the Mummy character she played it very well. But this was a movie where I feel some movies, not just the Mummy, but there's other movies that I feel the same for. Where they should, yes, they made a mistake on the first one, but they should just let it go and make another one, see what happens. And if they keep failing, then okay. But this was one of the movies. And let's be real. Like Marvel, for example, the one reason I give Disney, Marvel, whatever, a lot of credit was because all their movies was not great. I'm talking about obviously now a lot of movies recently haven't been great, but I'm talking about like in the past, Iron Man 2 and 3 never got great recognition. To me, I thought it was okay. But Thor 1 and 2, and then Love and Thunder. Well, forget Love and Thunder, but 1 and 2. I'm talking about like the early days. There were other movies that didn't do amazing, but the franchise was like, okay, no, we're just going to learn from it, build towards it, and now let's do better for the next one. And yes, again, some didn't continue on in the next one. They had to wait to the next movie or put the best in the Avengers or whatever. But my point is, they didn't just drop it. They had a plan, and they roll with it. Yes, in the middle of the plan, you make some adjustments, but that's how you do it. I like that. That's one thing I always give Disney credit for. Unlike DC did, they messed up my Zack Snyder universe because everything wasn't accepted. Some fans didn't like this, or they didn't make enough money as they wanted to, so they just dropped the whole plan. Instead of letting Zack Snyder fix some issues or let Zack Snyder release what he was going to release, because then we see the Zack Snyder version of Justice League, and it's amazing. Today, I think to this day, it's still one of the biggest streams ever, movies. It should have been released in theaters, in my opinion. But my point is, because I don't want to make it too long, studios need to learn to just just fix the mistake instead of just dropping everything. I don't believe that. That's one thing I always give Disney credit for. Even when Thor 1 and 2 didn't get good recognition, they kept going. And then we got Ragnarok. And now Ragnarok's one of the best, is the best Thor movie ever made. It's kind of weird that we came from Ragnarok to Love and Thunder. That's another conversation for another day. But you get my point. Anyway, this was one of the movies I thought should have been. Give it one more shot.
Number 2, Slappy the Dummy in Goosebumps. The true MVP
I don't think I've ever. No, I've never seen that.
Slappy the Dummy has lived rent-free in every 90s kid's head since his introduction at the end of R.L. Stein's Night of the Living Dummy.
With,
shiny head, black tux, blood red bow tie,
so I wouldn't know. Let me know in the comments if you agree.
With the ability to walk, talk, and commit atrocities of every shape and size. Slappy may not have originated the Western world's fear of dummies, but he sure as hell capitalized on it. As the totem figure and arguably also the series antagonist of Goosebumps, it makes sense that he would be the primary villain of the 2015 Goosebumps movie. This horror comedy, though, is far from the chills and thrills we used to experience between Stein's pages, and bears more resemblance to a sort of live-action Scooby-Doo than the horror story necessary to do such a character justice. Playing opposite an absurdly cast Jack Black as R.L. Stein, Slappy is voiced by Jack Black. He's not intimidating, he's not especially clever, and when push comes to shove, the dummy does little more than release
I've never
other
seen
monsters
this movie.
to go
I've seen
on a
the trailer
rampage
before,
of
I
their
just
own.
never had the time
An
to watch it.
opportunity sorely wasted.
So I wouldn't know, I'm not going to say anything.
Number 1, Predalien in Aliens vs. Predator Requiem.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted Alien vs. Predator 2 to be amazing, bro. And I thought that was a great idea in the first one where you see, spoiler, the alien come out of the Predator, so it's like a mixture of both of them, as they said, Pred Alien. And when you see the character in the movie, you're like, this could be really good. It was just in a poorly Alien vs. Predator 2 movie. Personally, in my opinion, outside of the scenes where Alien and Predator are facing each other, both movies were bad. Both movies. It's hard to watch. Sanaa Lathan, I did not believe, did a good job in Alien vs. Predator first. In my opinion, she's a good actress. I've seen her in other stuff, but in that one, she was a little too over the top and trying to, she was doing too much, in my opinion. And just the writing in itself, it was, But the best scenes were when Alien and Predator fought, which is what people wanted. But those were very, in my opinion, was not as much as it should be. And then the second one came out. And I remember, too, watching it, and I was like, I hope this is better. And I kind of felt the same as I did with the first one. Outside of the scenes where Alien and Predator are fighting each other, the movie was very dry. And that's just my opinion, so I see why it's number 1.
think that producers John Davis, David Giler,
Well, I
and
say it was
Walter
the
Hill had
number
learned
one
their
awful
lesson
one,
after
no,
the
but
critical
I can
and
see why it's on
commercial
the list.
disaster that was Alien vs. Predator. And yet, these gluttons for punishment came back with a sequel a mere 3 years later, scraping the very bottom of the barrel while waiting for someone to resurrect the Alien franchise. And yet, within this misguided cash grab, there is a great moment of unforeseen ingenuity.
I can see it being
Picking
a
up
quick
where the
cash
first
grab
film
because
left off, a
it wasn't
chestburster
much.
hatches
Like I was
from a
excited
fallen
for that
predator
part
warrior
there
during
in
the
the first
opening
one.
sequence, wreaking havoc on their ship and sending it crashing back to Earth, where a new kind of beast is born. By far the most compelling element of both films, the Predalien is a creature that combines the strength, skills, intellect, and sheer determination of both creatures into one hulking, dreadlocked, scaly-tailed brute. Wreaking havoc around a town in Colorado, it goes toe-to-toe with humans, predators, and, a nuclear bomb. Yep, when deciding what narrative route might best serve such a creature, the writers decided to nuke it. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Predalien barely gets any solid screen time, and when it does, it is mired in heavy blacks and shadows, so that by the end of the film, we're not sure if we even saw it at all.
Alright, well, shout out to What Culture. Like, some I agree, some I disagree, some I'm on the fence, but it's their opinion. I just wanted to see who they're going to choose. Some, I was kind of shocked that it's called a horror movie. Like, I would not call Van Helsing. For those who don't like horror, you can still watch Van Helsing. There's nothing fear about it. It's like horror about it, in my opinion. Just because it had Dracula in it and Wolfman doesn't mean that it was a horror movie. So some of I was questioning, like The Mummy, for example. I wouldn't call that a horror movie either. But that's their opinion. They thought it was horror. But anyway, yeah, that's my opinion. Shout out to Wall Culture. Check out their channel. They got a lot on horror alone. Like I said, they made their own channel for horror. So I want to see what other ones they got. So I want to see what other stuff they're talking about. They got a lot here. Anyway, thank y'all so much for tuning in. I'll check y'all later.